All right, number 219 is a Hiapo tapa, and tapa just means bark cloth. We'll talk about that later. It's from this tiny island, I'm going to say Niue, 1850 to 1900, and tapa, which means bark cloth. That's the material that this is painted on, and then this process of painting is freehand painting. So I'll explain that more later. Size-wise, about 8 feet by 6.5 feet. All right, so if we're looking at this area, those little islands above or just north of Australia, over to the right, we have the Solomon Islands. So do you guys remember what artwork came from this region of the Solomon Islands? It was from Unit 1, prehistory. We had another artwork from Papua New Guinea from prehistory. So from Papua New Guinea was the Ambum stone, and from the Solomon Islands, you had the Lapita terracotta fragment. So context relating these two together, the Lapita people are the ancestors to Polynesians. So they migrate throughout Polynesia, and as they spread around and they migrate, they're also bringing with them the mulberry tree. They're bringing it in the form of a seed. They're not bringing the tree. So with this, this process of making bark cloth started in all these islands that are kind of north of Australia. So making bark cloth or tapa is a distinctive part of Pacific culture solely done by women. So what we're seeing here is gender arts, right? Soft fabrics made by women. We can relate that to Faith Ringgold in the contemporary art unit. I'm gonna also attach this video for you guys to watch the process because it's showing the women beating this bark and then making it into cloth. All right, so to summarize the process after you've watched that video, we're going to take what I got from the Chicago Field Museum. So made from the bark of the paper mulberry tree, tapa was the main fabric of Polynesia. Women soaked strips of smooth silvery bark in water to whiten, soften, and cleanse it, then pounded many layers together into large seamless sheets. So it's pretty amazing to watch because they're taking these strips of bark that's maybe about like 1 inch wide and then pounding it to be maybe 4 to 6 inches wide and then layering that on top of another one, which then makes it wider and wider and wider. All right, so let's also write skilled women stamp, stencil, or paint designs onto the tapa. So ours that we're looking at is painted with black dye by hand. So to compare those different processes, this is ours, right? And this is freehand painted. We've also looked at the Lapita terracotta fragment. Do you remember how they got the designs in there? It's a type of stamping with tools or incising with tools. And then if you compare that to Kodze's Sundance on hide, that was made primarily with stencils. Okay, so Hiapo is the word for tapa in the Niuean language. And then if we compare these two Hiapo tapas together, what similarities are we saying? How can we describe the visual characteristics? So that's an example of a visual analysis, describing the formal qualities or the visual characteristics. Basically, what are you seeing? So we're seeing geometrical and botanical motifs or designs or shapes. Motifs is just fancy for designs or shapes. Concentric circles, that's like a target. So those circles diminish in size as they approach the center. That's how you can describe what a concentric circle is. Very complex patterns. It's very symmetrical. And then you can further define symmetrical by saying it's radial symmetry. So if you don't know what radial symmetry is, you don't need to write all this, but it's a type of balance in which parts of an object or picture are regularly arranged and radiate from a central point. You can see this both in nature and human-made objects. Okay, functions. Sorry, that picture should show up later, but that's okay. All right, so these Hiapo tapos would have been given as gifts. There's this word reciprocity, which is cultural exchange, gift giving. They're also dealing with wrapping sacred objects. So down below is another artwork from our Pacific unit called a staff god. And this would be wrapped in all these layers of bark cloth to contain the mana or the power, the force of that staff god. Also, that's a type of cloth, so it'd be used as decoration and clothing. Oh, and here's an example of gift giving, ceremonial gift giving. All right, what similarities are we seeing here with the Hiapo tapa bark cloth and the Alto Capu tunic, which is Inca. What do you think? All right, so women created both. Both of these artworks are using natural resources, right? You're using camelid fiber, intricate pattern of geometric shapes, and then the meaning of the specific design is lost. Like you should have been able to, people would have been able to read these designs and understand a lineage or a history or a story, but we don't really know anymore what these designs mean. And then the Hiapo tapa typically created for high status individuals, and then the Alto Capu tunic would be created for the Inca ruler. And you can also compare this to Lapita fragment and Tamati Wakanene. Lots of intricate lines, lots of swirls. All right, that is all.